All right, does that make your heart warm, Fletch?
Well, I say it's no coincidence that the song works again. We're able to go live, and the Dukes are in the tournament, fellas. The Dukes are dancing.
I'll tell you what. I thought I understood the whole Boston Red Sox emotion of 2004. But when he hit the foul shot with 9 seconds left that pretty much clinched it, emotions just came over me so much. I've never got that emotional at a win in my life.
Well, before we go deeper, Dave, and we'll all talk about how much we all cried, because I know we all cried. Every single one of us cried.
Yes, we did.
Let's introduce our guest. Dave,
yep, sure
go ahead.
Okay. First, that's Fletch here. Okay. There is our favorite sports anchor, Josh Taylor, the incredibly talented.
I'll do this Brady Bunch style.
And if I can let me get my angle there. The single greatest basketball player I have ever seen at Duquesne, and just a hell of a human being, BB Flenory.
Amen to that, brother.
Thank you, Dave.
Salute to the legend.
I appreciate that. I truly appreciate that.
Oh, man. So, Fletch, what's a question you want to ask?
Well, I sort of asked it already. Who here cried? I cried. Yep.
Without question. Absolutely.
And the thing about it, guys,
I told you guys a story off air about
Yeah.
what happened with me. So
why don't you tell that a little bit? That was a great story.
Oh, I'd love to tell the story. For the record, I was supposed to I wasn't supposed to see the game at all. I was supposed to already have been on the road to pick up my family. My wife and my kids were in Jersey with my in-laws for the week. And our plan was for me to drive to Carlisle halfway and pick them up. We had already had a time and like everything set. This was before we found out what time the game was going to be. So I had already planned to listen to the entire game on the radio. Well, it just so happened that my wife and my family had left 2 hours late, which gave me the opportunity to watch the first half of the game at home in the living room. So I watched the first half of the game, got on the road at halftime to drive out. So I'm driving toward Carlisle, and it's about 2.5, 3 hours, depending on how fast you drive. But I'm driving on the turnpike, and I'm listening to the game. I'm listening to Tim Benz and Ray Goss, and salute to them for a fantastic job on the radio call. I'm listening to the game, and I was just like Fletch. I was just like you when those free throws went in with 9 seconds left. And bear in mind, I'm listening to the game, and my phone is going crazy because everyone I know is texting me going, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" I'm like, "No, I'm not okay. Stop asking me if I'm okay." So finally, the free throws go in, and I mean, the entire last chance of the game, I'm screaming for every single thing that happened, good, bad, or indifferent. So those free throws go in, and I'm just I kind of went quiet. The realization hit me, and it's just this is actually happening. This is a real thing. And when it was finally over, I had 3 different waves of emotion. One was just pure excitement, so I was just kind of screaming, and then another one was just elation, so I'm crying. And then I kind of relaxed for a second, and then I had a second wave of just pure emotion and tears, because if there's one person I know in my age bracket that loved Duquesne basketball more than I did, it was my cousin Nathan. We were first cousins. Our moms were sisters. We were 3 months apart. He's 3 months older than I am. We grew up together, and when we were in high school, he moved from Pittsburgh to Northern Virginia. Actually, I should say Southern Virginia, Newport News area. And we had talked about it when we were in high school. We made a pact. If we ever got a chance to go to college together, we'd go together. So we ended up going to Duquesne together. And we were roommates for 1 semester, and we never did it again because we were ready to kill each other. But after all of that, we got out of college. We both graduated. He got his bachelor's and his master's degree from Duquesne. He passed away. It's been almost 3.5 years now due to complications with a brain tumor. But he had been previously a manager for the basketball team while we were in school. So he was the guy that I even went to as far as Duquesne basketball was concerned. And as big of a fan as I was, and being around the program as much as I had been, He was my inside guy. And even for my 21st birthday, he managed to find, and you guys will appreciate this reference, he managed to get a hold of the 2000 jerseys from that team, and it was Simon Ogunlacey's 00 jersey. And he gave that to me for my 21st birthday. It's still hanging in my closet. Like I took our seam ripper and took the nameplate off the stitching, and I still have the jerseys to this day. Like my whole senior year, that season, I wore that jersey to every game we went to. There's a picture. If you follow me on Instagram, Josh Taylor HD, there's a picture I posted yesterday after the game from 20 years ago of me and my old roommate in the red and blue crew in the front row. And I'm wearing a white Duquesne 00 Simon Ogunlacey jersey. My cousin's the one that got it for me. But long story short, when the game ended, the first thing I thought of was, I want to call my cousin and freak out with him.
That's tough.
And I couldn't. And like that emotion just completely washed over me. And I'm thinking he would be over the moon right now. And I just kept telling myself, I'm like, we did it, Nate. We did it. We did it. And like I had tears streaming, driving on the turnpike, trying not to wreck my car. And it was just one of those moments where it was excitement, it was elation, it was joy, it was sadness, it was everything all at the same time. But it was worth all of it because for me, I mean, granted, I'm only 42, but it's a lifelong journey for me as a Duquesne fan. I've been a Duquesne fan since the Scott Edgar days in the early mid-90s. So I was in middle school at that point. So this is almost a lifelong journey for me as a Duquesne fan and alum. And that 42 years of catharsis all came out at the same moment. It was worth the journey.
What about you, BB? What were you feeling? What were you thinking?
Well, I had an opportunity to talk to the team when they were 0-5. Coach Dambright called me and said, "Can you come down and talk to the team?" So I was telling them to play for their families, to play for each other, forget the outside noise, because at that time, Pittsburgh were probably saying same old Duquesne. So when they won the championship, for me, I was so happy for those young men, their families. Coach Dambright came to Duquesne for his dad. I mean, that's something that a movie could be made of. He came to Duquesne for his dad and then won the championship. So for me, I wasn't as much elated for us old timers. I was more elated for the young men because they will have memories for the rest of their lives. So,
well, talking about that, BB, since you are the one that actually had that kind of memory, why don't you take us back 47 years ago to that win that sent us to our last tournament, the upset win?
Well, let me say this. Same thing I told the team that day. We were 11-14 before we went into the NCAA tournament. And nobody cares about your record. It's if you win the tournament. So we ended up being 15-15. We won the tournament. Nobody knows that we were 500. All they know is that was the last team that went to the tournament. But I can tell you this, it was such a great moment for me and my family. We still remember it. People still talking to me like you are today. And that's what I try to express to those kids. 40 minutes for 40 years. It's 40 minutes of your hard work for 40 years of memories.
Man, that's incredible. And it was called here, by the way, by this man, BB Flenory.
Yes.
Made that call earlier a couple months ago on our show.
I told you guys, I guaranteed it.
You did guarantee it. And,
Wow.
at 0-5, I was saying, damn you, BB, you got me excited. But, yeah, they definitely turned around. But, guys, here's the thing about that game. It had to unfold like that. We could not go for an easy win after everything that this program has been through. That's how
the same thing I said to one of my
man.
best friends on the phone. We're like, they weren't going to make it easy for us. Like that first
No.
half felt too easy, and it was not going to end that way. We had the exact same feeling. I totally agree with that.
It was almost like the ghost of Dennis Golden, who you might not know, Josh, but
I
you
was
know,
not aware.
but it's almost as if his ghost was standing over. No,
Swatting balls away.
Yeah, we're not going to make it easy. Now,
Well, one thing about Duquesne, and I told them, they're not consistent. I mean, they can be world beaters for a half, and in the second half, they can, so every game's going to be close. I mean, it's not going to be that Duquesne crushes anybody. They're always going to keep it close because they're not consistent.
Well, Josh, what'd you think about that defense yesterday, which was just one of the great defensive efforts?
I felt like it was the same kind of effort they provided throughout the entire tournament. The thing that made me feel so confident going into that game, and it wasn't even after the St. Bonaventure game. I think it was after the Dayton game. The way they played in that first half against Dayton defensively really, really boosted my confidence just in terms of if there's a reason why they're going to win this tournament, it's going to be because of their defense. I thought the way they played that first half against Dayton, and even coming out with only a 2-point halftime lead, when I thought it could have easily been 8 or 9 points if they just made a few more shots down the stretch of the first half. But that defensive effort, you can tell there had been an emphasis on it. And you guys know this as much as I do. And BB, you've been around Keith Dambrot long enough. You know how he is about defense and the emphasis that he placed on it. And it was one of those things that if you know Keith Dambrot, you're watching this effort, you're going, Keith knows exactly what he wanted these guys to do. He knew exactly what his game plan was, and he knew exactly how he was going to win games with this team. And I thought it was the defensive effort and the defensive results. I mean, when you face a team like Dayton, a ranked team, a team that was an automatic, a team that was an at-large, pick already to make the tournament. Everybody knew it before that game even tipped off. And you hold a, All-American player to 3 points in the first half, and you come out with a halftime lead. That's about as much as any coach can hope for, as far as being able to stay in the game. And it was halftime of the Dayton game where I'm going, if they keep this up, if you can get 5 more quarters of this, or 5 more halves of this, I guess you can say, they can lift the trophy when it was over.
Absolutely.
And I thought they delivered exactly that the rest of the way. They gave us 5 more halves of that kind of defensive intensity effort, and the results were there. So my hat was off to the coaching staff for what they did, and the players themselves for the effort.
Josh, this is going to be a weird question, but can you give me a drum roll? Hang on. Ooh. There it is.
Gentlemen.
Hey, national
Gentlemen.
champion. A member of the 2003 national champion Duquesne football team, Robert Healy.
Oh, hello, boys.
Hello, how you doing?
There's
Good
my
to
guy.
see all of you.
Yeah. He's
You as well.
What's up, brother?
Thanks for having me. What a great day it is to be a Duke.
It is,
Indeed.
and we were talking
It's a great
about
day
our
to be a Duquesne
experiences
Duke.
yesterday. Why don't you give us how you were doing about 3:00 in the afternoon?
I've never felt less comfortable about an 8-point lead in my life. And it seemed like the 8-point lead lasted the entire second half until like a minute and a half to go, you know what I mean, or 2 minutes ago, and it tightened up. I think as Keith told, it might have been WT, I forget who told. Keith said that we weren't making shots. We missed. We're 1 for 19 and 2 for 22, and yet the lead never got smaller. It was so bizarre. It looked like we were doing everything we could to try to lose. But I got to give credit to, our guards, Jimmy Clark and Day Grant, for as much as, those guys can score and shoot, and the knock on some of those guys is, well, they're not going to play defense. Those guys take pride in their defense. They play great defense. We offensive rebound.
Absolutely.
All the little things you have to do to win, they're so cliche, right? But they're cliche for a reason, because we went cold And that happens sometimes, but you can always control your effort. And the defensive effort was there to maintain that lead enough that we could just hold on. Because I thought we got outplayed for the last maybe 25, 30 minutes of the game and still won. And that's so encouraging, for the future, for the culture, about being a lockdown team like that. I mean, that was really inspirational, but it didn't help our nerves, because I would have loved a blowout. My kids, I scared my children. They've never seen me that way.
Well,
I totally had my dog running out of the living room.
Yeah, I had my
I
mother
ran
brought
her
a dog to my house, and it almost bit me because I kept clapping. Oy.
It could have been the curse of the confetti.
Well, I always thought that offense won games.
Yes.
This is the first time that Duquesne convinced me that defense wins games.
Well, and you were on the court. Offense did win us games.
Fair. Point well made. Very well.
No,
made.
I was so impressed, and those Day and Jimmy, and guys like Kareem. I have Kareem in class. He's one of my majors in the sports information program. And I tell Kareem, and everybody listening, the old heads love Kareem. Everybody loves Kareem because Kareem plays D, and Kareem's a leader, and he speaks out, and he's always on point. So he's going to bring you defense. But to see your all conference guys, the scorers, also buy into that. And Jimmy Clark, being the all defensive team guy that he is, you could have made a case for Day this year too. And Dave Dixon with the blocks. I mean, it is a total team effort on defense, and the offensive rebounding to keep milking clock, because we might not have got many second chance points, but we also held the ball sometimes for like a minute and a half, and it shrunk the game. They can't come back if they don't have the ball. So, nerve wracking, but inspirational.
And until the latter part of the game, we rarely gave up a second shot.
Right.
Bob, to your point, there was a point in, I think it was maybe 3 or 4 minutes left in the game, where Duquesne got a defensive rebound, and Kareem Rozier, instead of just rushing down the floor to get back, it might have been between 2 to 3 minutes left. He got to the other side. He got across the timeline, and he pulled up, came back out, and milked a little bit of clock. And I'm sitting there going, all right, I'll take it. It made sense to me. I think they had a 2-possession lead. Yeah. He pulled up. He didn't try to rush anything. He came back and milked the clock a little bit. I thought that was a wise decision. That's one of those veteran-type plays that smart players know. If you have the lead and the ball, you got the game in your hands. So don't rush the opportunity to give it back to them. I mean, possession's 9/10 of the law. It's 10/10 in that particular situation. I thought Kareem Rozier showed a lot of wisdom there and no understanding and knowing, hey, let's pull this up and let's bleed this out a little bit, make it hard for them to come back, and it worked.
Can I share with you guys a story of Kareem in the classroom?
Sure.
Because I remember that play. He pulled up for we had a 3-pointer wide open. He didn't take the shot, and I think that was a huge difference maker. Kareem in the classroom. You heard, because I heard, like we all have, Keith talk about how he's like the best leader he's had, which says a lot.
Mm-hmm.
This kid in the classroom, he's a good student, by the way. Like, he's an A student in my classes. And you're not supposed to talk about grades, but if you say A, who's going to care? Yeah. He's an A student in my classes, and he earns them. This kid can write, he can speak, and we have a group project in this one class called media literacy. And I think people look toward personalities like him to be leaders. This kid, one of his teammates started to stumble over some of his words in class. Kareem was like, "You got this, man." And then, like, after it's done, he goes over and hugs the kid. I'm like, this dude treats everything like we all win together, and he's a teammate. This dude does it in the classroom. It was so cool to see. I mean, the things Keith's telling us that he does in practice and we see in the court, that's the way this kid lives his life. And he is a good dude.
You love hearing that.
Wow.
Now, BB,
and he's really not a veteran. He's only a sophomore, but he has
true sophomore.
Yeah, he's only a sophomore. Yeah, he has leadership qualities that's remarkable for sure.
Well, as a guard extraordinaire, talk about Day and where he ranks among the history of our school.
I'm gonna be honest with you. Day is a great player. And he's turned his game over to playing defense this year, which is great because he's a top defensive player. He could have been on the all defensive team. I don't think Day is consistent as he could be. Sometimes he can shoot you in a game and shoot you out of a game sometimes. I'd like to see him be a little bit more consistent. I think his field goal percentage is around 33, 34%. I think that people sleep on Jimmy Clark. I think Jimmy Clark reminds me of Norm Nixon. And I say that because Jimmy Clark can beat you defensively. He can pass. He can score. I think Jimmy Clark is way underrated.
Wow.
But I told Jimmy that when I talked to the team, I told Jimmy, I said, Jimmy, you could be as good as you want to be because he can lock down the top defender. He can get you 15 to 20 points a game. He can get you 8, 9 rebounds. He can get you 4 or 5 assists. I really like Jimmy Clark.
All right. Now,
guys, isn't it cool that I don't know, BB, do you remember, did you play with Bernie O'Keefe? Is that a name that sounds familiar to you?
I know Bernie well. He was probably 3 or 4 years ahead of me.
I saw him today at a Panera Bread. I'm working, and he saw my gear. He's like, Duquesne, and I'm great. He tells me he's on the team, so I gotta know everything, right? That's the second time today I've had a conversation about Norm Nixon, and I'm like, and now I'm on listening to the radio, and I'm hearing Norm Nixon. Somebody dropped a Cy Green reference today. This is like a fever dream for Dukes fans. How are we we're in front page of the local paper and stuff. I mean, it is so cool to bring these. Norm Nixon made me a Lakers fan, and to hear these names again, it's a long time coming, man. Josh knows this. We were in school together. Our teams were like 3-26. We were Danny Nee era. Our red and blue crew was one row deep.
I was Danny Nee era at the end and Darrell Porter era at the beginning.
Oh man, you got me
first
beat.
Came in, yeah.
Oh wow.
Now I will say this: I was there for a city game win. I was there for the city game win in 2000. I was a sophomore that year, and then after that, the Danny Nee era came. So I think I was a couple of years Darrell Porter, a couple of years of Danny Nee. But yeah, and you want to talk about bridging eras? That was an interesting time. And yeah, the red and blue crew. I remember the first year when the red and blue crew began, and it was a much bigger group. And a part of that, and I'll tell this story briefly. Part of that was because I was an RA in St. Anne's that year, on the second floor of St. Anne's, and one of my floor activities or floor events was to bring my entire floor with me to basketball games, and we would go cheer with the red and blue crew. I was part of the construction of it all. It was like a bunch of residents from my building, and we were kind of flooding that whole thing. And we had a handful of guys that were on the football team. Among them, and Bob, you'll know this name. It forgot. It went from me that quickly.
Is this a fan or
Javon Bradley?
Oh, you sure?
Javon Bradley was one of those. Yeah, he was one of those players on my floor. He was a freshman that year. Ended up playing linebacker for Duquesne, being one of Duquesne's better linebackers at that point. Him and a bunch of other guys on the football team who did not live on my floor. That all kind of just all paired up around us. And it was like a group 30, 40 guys deep, all going down with red and blue crew shirts on. My wife being part of that group too. I want to say she was maybe a sophomore or a junior at that time. Not granted, we weren't dating at the time. We didn't even know each other, but we were both, inaugural members of the red and blue crew back in the block letter shirt days.
Well,
those early days of the red and blue.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's you're not wrong. Like the initial group was huge, and then it kind of whittled down a bit after a couple years, especially after I graduated. It kind of shrank a little bit. You're not wrong.
Dave, I remember my freshman year. It was one of the most heartbreaking losses. It was, the Eastern 8 tournament finals against Pitt. They had won the first couple games. They'd beaten Rhode Island. They'd beaten West Virginia. And they were a better team than Pitt that year. And it was just a heartbreaking loss. And, we left that thinking, okay, I'm ready for next year. And then next year never came, fellas. It just didn't.
Never came.
But, let's look forward for a second. Let's talk about this matchup with BYU and what you guys think.
Well, like I said earlier, Duquesne can beat anybody, but they also can lose to anybody. I think if Duquesne plays their game, if Duquesne uses their strengths, I think Duquesne will beat BYU. But once again, they have to be consistent. As you know, in the first half against VCU, they looked great in the first half, but the second half, they were inconsistent. So I think Duquesne can beat anybody when they play their game.
I guess I'll jump in there. I admit I haven't. We don't get to see BYU too much out here. I don't know anything about these guys. You know, I know they're Mormon. That's all I know. You know what I mean?
They're not playing on Sunday. We know that.
They won't play on Sunday.
They can't play on Sunday.
So I've listened or watched Duquesne basketball since 1998. I would fall asleep listening to Ray Goss when I was 15. You know, and then I went to school here and everything. Now I work here. All I know is Duquesne basketball more than anything else, and I can say that I've never seen a team, at least in my time, and the research that I can do only goes back so far to where I'm talking out of my rear end. But, you know, BB could speak about this in much better detail or with more authority than the rest of us can, but I've never seen a team look like they're playing more for each other, you know, at least since I've been a Dukes fan. Mm-hmm. And now you add that Keith Dambrot is on the way out and what his wife is going through and the emotion of the last 48 hours. And I can't bet against them. I mean, 11 seeds win. It's a legit 11 seed. I mean, that was their roof, their ceiling, if you will, and they got it. The 11 seed is legit. Right. And 11
I thought 12 or 13.
I did too.
Yeah.
So,
me too.
You know, if Pitt makes it as an at-large, they're also an 11. You know, I mean, talk about like their quality team. And do we think Pitt couldn't beat BYU? And BYU is a gettable win, which is very exciting to consider. You know, we could be looking at a round of 32 at Duquesne. So my only, it's this hidden vigorish here is that Duquesne is left for dead at 0-5. They've been playing with house money ever since, it seems, and they're playing loose. They looked calm on the sideline even as the lead dwindled. Any team that plays defense and rebounds like they're playing and playing for each other can beat anybody. Like BB said, they play their game. They literally can beat anybody, except for maybe the number one seeds. You know, they're talking about all-time upsets, but I don't see how I don't look at the round of 32 as being out of the question. Not at all.
No.
Do I? And if there's something I look at as far as it, and BB will tell you this because, you know, especially when you get to the tournament, matchups are important. Matchups matter. And I think on paper, this is a great matchup for Duquesne. And we talked about earlier how, you know, the hallmark of Keith Dambrot, any team he coaches, his defense is a big thing. But more specifically, perimeter defense is like a calling card for a Keith Dambrot coach team. His teams are historically adept at, you know, limiting three-point shooting. And that's something I think that works in Duquesne's favor because BYU is a team that likes to shoot from outside. And they're matched up with a Duquesne team that's capable of limiting that. And I thought we saw that throughout the course of the conference tournament, that they were able to limit teams' ability to shoot the ball from the outside. I think that helps for Duquesne. And you hear the old adage, and Bob mentioned already defense and rebounding, but another thing that's always talked about a lot in the tournament is guard play. Is can you have reliable and efficient guard play? And Duquesne's got two. They've got two guards that I think
Josh,
can match
I'm
up.
cut you off for 1 second. I'm going to cut you off for 1 second. They do have two great guards, but I do want to give a shout out to Jake D. Michelle or the Michael or whatever.
Jake DeMichael.
He is the X factor. He's always around the ball. He's always making things happen. They got three guards. Jake DeMichael, I thought Coach was crazy playing him, but man, this kid is tough, man.
I thought a great stat was I think they were 14-5 when Jake DeMichael started.
Yep.
And I don't think it's a coincidence. I think the effort that he puts together, and Keith Dambrot had a great comment about Jake DeMichael. He said Jake DeMichael never gets high strung, he never gets stressed out. He's just very loose. He plays with just a great attitude where he's just having fun. He's just going out and playing, and he doesn't get tight. He just stays loose the entire time. And I thought that one particular layup late in that second half, where Jimmy Clark went to drive and looked like he just disappeared and the ball ended up in Jake DeMichael's hands and just laid it in. I heard it on the radio, but then I watched it afterwards. I'm going, man, no wonder why Ray Goss is so amazed because it looked like the ball had disappeared. Yeah. And Jake DeMichael, I thought, played so strong in the conference tournament. And to BB's point, I think you're right. I mean, Jake DeMichael is that third guard, being a freshman walk-on at that. He's one of those stories that if this team were able to in the round of 32, you could hear the announcers talking about this at great length. About this guy, Jake DeMichael, who's the walk-on that's starting on this team. That's one of those things that, Bob will tell you, we as broadcasters, we love to find those good story points. Jake DeMichael's going to be one of those story points that the announcers are going to harp on frequently. And, yeah, I think that's true. I think he does really fit in as a guy who could be an X factor in a game like this. And it kind of strengthens the point for me that, I could easily see this team winning a first-round game for everything that I laid out and for what BB mentions. And kind of bringing it back around to everything else and the effort. And I thought Bob made a great point about the selflessness of this team. And another one of those Keith Dambrot kind of hallmarks is he likes teams that are unselfish. He likes guys that play together. He likes guys that care more about the collective than the individual. And you can tell the teams that follow it, and you can tell the teams over the years that might not have followed it as much. You can just tell individual players like, okay, I understand why Keith likes him, but he's not exactly the kind of guy Keith would want ideally. And there were players like that over time, but this particular group, they're cut from the exact same cloth. They're very unselfish. I love the way the guys in the front court all work together, because we talk about the guards, but you're talking 5-6 guys in that front court that all rotate in. They all play varying minutes. They're all doing different things. They're all doing dirty work, getting on the floor, getting rebounds, playing defense, and they're all seeming to work towards the same goal. And it could be David Dixon at one point. It could be Drame. It could be Machu Shranki. But they're all still pulling on the same rope. And that kind of effort from your front court, coupled with what you get out of your back court, and those three guys we just talked about, it makes any team that kind of has that kind of description really dangerous as an 11 seed in the first round.
Guys, let me give you a
I'm
number.
going to guarantee a win here. And Chris, why am I going to guarantee a win?
Because you like to make guarantees. I don't know.
Because you're going to give the stat on why we're going to guarantee the win.
So here's the number.
Oh, wow.
The number is 10. If you can hold BYU to under 10 3-pointers made, you're going to beat them. That's what the trend has been all season. They're in what we would call George Costanza language. They're chuckers, fellas. They'll put up 30 to 35 3-pointers a game.
Wow.
You're
saying less than
fewer than
10 makes?
10 makes. That's the number.
Anytime they get under 10 makes, they lose.
Well, that kind of plays into our hands a little bit,
Bob knows where I'm going with this. I was going to say the same thing. You're probably going to say what I was about to say. So go ahead.
No, you go ahead, man.
Oh, I was going to say this. The stat that this is one of those things I think is just a complete testament to Keith Dambrot over the course of his tenure at Duquesne. 97-1 when this team allows 60 points or less.
Jeez.
Under Keith Dambrot.
Wow.
It feeds into that. Like, this is one of those, if they can limit them shooting outside and they can get to one of those rock fights that Keith likes to talk about.
Yeah.
97-1 when you allow 60 points or less. And I thought the announcers during the A-10 tournament, and at the time, this was during the St. Boniface. It was during the Dayton game, actually. And they're sitting there going, like, wait a minute. They've held 96 teams to 60 or less, and that's
And
you think about it, you're like, that is kind of an insane thing to do in this day and age. 97-1 when they do is incredible.
And that's so impressive with a 30-second clock. I mean, in my day, we didn't have a 30-second clock. I wish we did. But if you could hold a team to 60 points when you got to go up and down and shoot every 30 seconds, there's no four corners or anything like that, like in the old days. That's very impressive.
Not only that, BB, now when you get it back, too, it goes to 20 only. It's like,
Right.
Hey, the game's quick. There's lots of possessions now. You
want to talk about the importance of a 30-second clock? Talk a little about the 34-33 St. Pete's loss in the second round of the NIT, BB.
Well, people don't. I'm glad you asked me that, Dave. People don't realize. They say, "Well, BB, would you rather have?" No, they don't even say that. They say, "BB, Would you? What about the 3-point shot? I'm like, I would forgo the 3-point shot for the shot clock.
Yeah.
Because we play games because we had a high octane offense with Doug Arnold and Bruce Atkins and all those guys, and myself, and we scored 90, 100 some games. Then some games they'd hold the ball on us, which was evident in St. Peter's, and then we lost. Well, it was 33, 32 or something like that because there was no shot clock, back then. You could hold the ball in the four corners half the game. So, man, I would have loved to have played with a shot clock.
You had a lot more points, I bet, man. You would have had to shoot more
with the shot clock.
You got to shoot every 30 seconds. Man, I love that. Shit. My teammates told me I shot every 4 seconds.
Absolutely, man. That's a Sweet 16 team in 1980 with a shot clock.
Yeah,
I really believe it.
Guys, I got to have an interview this morning with, you guys know Will Graves, the AP reporter. I'm sure Josh knows him.
Yep.
He was asking about, and we're talking around this same era now, because someone mentioned it earlier. I think Chris did, the Big East departure, Pitt going to the Big East, 81, 82, I believe it was, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So it's right around that era. When did the shot clock come to college basketball?
83, 84?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so it's right around that same era. But that's to me, that's
did the shot clock come before the 3-pointer?
Right after, I think. I could be wrong. I thought it was right after. But that guy Will was asking me, and I'm not sure what he'll be able to do with our interview because 10 minutes later Dan announced he was having a press conference. I think our story got spiked, but he was asking me the history of based on
he did that to screw you, Bob.
What's that?
He did that to screw you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That was on. Yeah. He doesn't like it. No, but we talked about the history of the program. Of course, he referenced in the book Dave and I did with the Kings on the Bluff book, and I put forth what Chris mentioned is that was the moment where the programs went on different paths locally, and then it's just such a hard time to recruiting when you're not even the top dog in your own market, and it's just Big Brother down the street. But it's been a long haul to get back to. Now we're at that point where, if Pitt had played a city game, they're probably in the tournament.
That's right.
You have to do that stuff. And by the way, in fairness, I actually called up Madden's show today because he was wanting anybody to talk to Kane. I said, I'll call, and I got stuff to say. And I said, look, full disclosure on this, the Duke should be playing Robert Morris every year too. So we need
fully agree.
I agree.
That being said, I find it highly hypocritical of the University of Pittsburgh to complain that Penn State won't play them in football and they won't play Duquesne in basketball.
Agreed.
Look what happens if you don't respect the rivalry. Once the shoe hits the other foot, you wish you had the game. And now, the Dukes don't have to play them now, and I think they should for the good of everybody. But that's just that kind of stuff shouldn't be messed with, and they need the game. It means something to Pittsburgh, but it also helps both programs. I just think that this way college athletics is going with losing these rivalries and everything else that's changing. Boy, I hate to see that. And I think it's in a bit this year.
I've always said that for fans, the city game really matters. But I've also said, as a competitor, be relevant and Pitt will play you.
Yeah.
So now that Duquesne went to the big dance, it might be banging on the door to play us. So I think you got to win. I'm not saying that the rivalry, they should not play the city game every year. But if they don't want to play us, let's win, and they'll be knocking down our door. So,
hey, Dave, earlier you and I were talking, and you pinpointed really the true downfall of the program to one game in particular. Talk about that.
You talking about the St. Louis game?
Yeah.
Yeah, I call it the most important game of this restoration because I'm not so sure if we don't blow that big lead against St. Louis when the A-10 tournament came to Pittsburgh, if Jim Ferry loses his job at that point. And if Jim Ferry doesn't lose his job at that point, we don't get Keith Dambrot, and we might not be having this conversation right now. So it's just strange how things really turn out for the best. I remember that, to me, that was my personal, because of the Pitt victory the year before, because it looked like we might be finally turning it around,
right.
and then it just went to hell the next season. And that game, okay, well, we're finally playing well. We're finally looking like we can do something. And then they just blew a huge lead against St. Louis.
Well, let me ask you this, Dave, if you don't mind.
Please.
Prior to, I've always loved Coach. As I told you earlier, that we were going to win Atlantic 10 this year.
Yeah.
But prior to this week, there were a lot of folks calling for his head.
Yeah.
And if he don't win it, people wouldn't be saying, they would be saying, well, we shouldn't have got Dambrot. So what are your thoughts on that in terms of we lucked up to get him, but if he didn't do what he did this week, people would be upset.
Look, I'm a huge fan of Dambrot. I would have been disappointed had they fired him. I think he's brought us to a level we haven't seen. I mean, you guys have never seen that, really, even in the Everhart years. The 2009 final, I didn't expect them to beat Temple. Temple was a superior team. And I guess I just didn't believe in that team. I'm a fan of Dambrot. When he had the tough year in the COVID year, I was one of the ones who would have been mad had they fired him. I thought he deserved a chance to turn the program around after that year. So no, I would not have been a fan of letting him go at this point. Plus, I
feel the same way.
Coach, and he's the defensive coach.
It's hard to find a good coach, you know.
I agree, totally agree.
This is the reason why Steelers fans, would be hard pressed to find a Mike Tomlin replacement too. I mean, you can make that comparison. I mean, people get frustrated when it doesn't work, and it's been so long. And Dambrot was in year 7. It's like, hey, when was this supposed to happen? A good coach is hard to come by, Yeah. I mean, you got to be careful what you wish for.
Be careful what you ask for. Be careful what you ask.
Well, especially now, guys. I mean, you've got NIL, you've got the transfer portal. It's a whole different game. And frankly, who the hell wants the aggravation to be a coach with all of that?
He gave that as a reason today at his press conference for why he did. He gave it as a reason. Yeah. It was right there with the health issues in his family. He goes, the way things are changing, I don't blame him at all. And gentlemen,
we've seen it already.
I got to leave the call. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
All right. Good seeing you.
Good to talk to you, Bob.
Good to you guys. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Dave, Chris.
Bring it home, man. Bring it home.
All right, gentlemen.
As Bob exits, I'll echo his point. And I thought Dave Harper talked about this too during Keith Dambrot's press conference. He talked about how, how important it is to not only find a coach, but to have that support around him, not only financially, not only, through as far as the support that you can give financially to a coach, but the fact that you support him, even though things may not work every time, you got to have that support around him and keep, some kind of level of faith in him that you're going to get to the point that you originally wanted to get to. And they did that. And Keith talked about how, Dave Harper never wavered. He talked about how Ken Gormley, the president, never wavered, and the board of trustees never wavered. He had their full confidence. And I think that's really important, especially now in a time period where 2 to 3 years kind of feels like the mini window. It's kind of a microwave kind of effect to where it's not happening in this short period of time. People are ready to cut bait and move on. And especially when you're trying to take on the kind of job that Duquesne was. And I thought that it was, really great how Keith was very candid about how, he had been approached for this job before and he didn't take it because he didn't think the university was committed to putting the kind of commitment and full faith behind him that he thought was needed to do what he wanted to do. And then eventually Dave Harper came around and Dave pursued him and he came back and said, okay, this most recent time, he felt like the university was ready for that kind of commitment and to provide him that kind of support. And that investment paid off. And you don't always find that with every program. You don't always find that with every administration. You don't always find that with every athletic department. So all of that kind of stacks in Duquesne's favor as to, hey, not only did Keith Danbrock get this right, Duquesne got this right.
Absolutely.
Dave Harper got this right. Ken Gormley got this right. They did everything that was necessary to find the right coach and to get to that point where they enjoyed that level of success. And I say all that on the same level as Bob. I have to get moving too. I got a couple little ones we got to get in the tub and for bedtime.
Not
I
a
promise
problem.
I'm too ready to do all
Thanks
that.
so much for
Josh,
joining.
always great to have everybody.
I'll say all this on my way out. Like Dave, I would have been very disappointed too if say, the unthinkable that we're talking about that Keith Danbrock were dismissed, because I think even if this team would have, let's say they say they don't beat VCU, I think just the level of energy that's been put into this program in the past couple years, the UPMC Cooper Fieldhouse, which is absolutely gorgeous. I mean, I have classmates of mine that have come back and seen the building. They're like, dude, if we had this 20 years ago, we'd never leave. It's just to see Duquesne from a facility standpoint, from just even just an overall energy standpoint, work to that point that I had never seen as a student, even in the years following. And I graduated 20 years ago. Just to see that happen and get to that point now, it feels a lot more rewarding. And I think not only Keith is deserving of that and the players themselves, but Dave Harper, Ken Gormley, I think a lot of people that were involved in that process and continuing that process along deserve a lot of credit for how far they've gotten. And it's an exciting time to be a Duquesne fan. I'd like to hope that level of energy and excitement, that it doesn't wane. I hope it, at the very least, I hope it stays where it is. I'd love to see it build, but I just don't want to see it wane, even with Keith Danbrock moving on, with the next coaching staff and the next wave of players. I want to see this continue to build. And I think the best thing about it, and Keith mentioned this too, he said, I think I left this in a much better place than where I found
definitely
it.
Did.
Absolutely.
And that's the more important thing.
Yeah.
I think that's the paramount of all of this, is that Keith Danbrock came 7 years ago, and Dave talked about it, how Dave Harper talked about, this used to be a place where coaches' careers came to die. Well, now it looks like a much better job. And now it looks like it's a place where coaches' careers could be built upon. And I hope that's the case, not only for coaches, but players' careers can be built upon. And good teams can be built upon if they're sticking with the blueprint that they have. So that is my piece. Fellas, I appreciate the time. Thanks for having me.
Well, before you go, Josh, I wanted to say I've always wanted to meet you, man. I hope one day
Likewise.
I hope one day we will get a chance to meet each other, man. Very, very, very proud of you, young man.
Nice.
That's an honor coming from a legend, from a local and Duquesne legend. That's an honor. I hope we get to as well. Appreciate you, man. It's good to talk to you guys.
You as well.
Take care.
All right. Take care, fellas.
So, Dave, here's my takeaway.
Can I say one thing before you do?
Sure, go ahead.
If you don't mind. I'm sorry. I don't want to.
Not at all, my friend.
No, go for it.
Me and Coach Danbrock are very, very, very close. Okay. And I may or may not should say this, but I'm so glad that he won, because everything worked out in his favor. I'm not so sure if he wouldn't have won it this year that everybody wouldn't be saying he was a great choice. And me and him have talked about that in our private moments that I'm sharing. So I'm just so happy for him and his family. I don't know what to do. So,
well, here's my takeaway, fellas.
Yeah.
If I'm ever in a rut, I'm calling BB for a pep talk, because you look at what he did for this team. So, if I'm down, BB, that phone's ringing. You better talk me through it.
Oh, no question. Love to.
Now, do you think it's going to be Coach Joyce that's going to get the job?
Yeah, from the little bit that I know, yeah, I think Coach Joyce is being groomed for the job. Yes.
Good choice, I think.
Yes.
That is. But I mean, you're right. There would have been calls for his head.
But look what he's done in the past few years. I mean, he's done a hell of a job here. What more do you want?
I mean, this is the society we live in right now. If you can't bring me a world championship in 1 year, You're out. What happens to Coach Tomlin is an absolute embarrassment.
Yes.
In my mind,
Right.
because that
With absolutely
that man is handed, never loses a team. Coach Dambrot didn't lose a team this year. I mean, after that St. Joseph game, it would have been easy for this to be a 16, 17 loss season. But he kept it together. He figured it out. And I take issue with people saying what a shock this was that they won this tournament. It wasn't a shock. They were the hottest team in the league.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I'm going to let you guys go too. Thank you so much for having me. I thought it was a great show.
Well, we enjoyed having you here, my friend.
Okay. I'll talk to you guys soon.
All right. You take care. Bye. All right.
He fires you up, doesn't he?
He does. He does. That our friend Sean Christian, who was at the game on,
and he's flying to Nebraska out here.
Yeah. No, I talked to him on the way home from work today. He is flying to Nebraska. He's gonna go there and see the game, come back for work, and if they win, he's going back Saturday.
Nice.
So, but we are obliged to say our pussy of the week.
Yes, we are.
Because I don't think Brian would be happy if.
No, and I think it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, I'm a fan of the Pitt program. I'm not a. Oh God, I hate. They play in different leagues. It's a Pittsburgh team. I grew up rooting for Pitt in all sports, and I agree they got screwed out of the tournament, Chris. They got screwed. They are a better team than Virginia.
Yes,
they showed it on the court in their home arena.
Yes,
but that being said, you don't turn down the NIT because you're pouting.
No, I mean, just from a very practical thing, you're going to make some extra money.
Yeah.
You're also going to get some extra practices that you wouldn't get.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes no sense. And I'm a big Heather Lyke fan, huge Heather Lyke fan. But this decision was, I did not like it at all.
And I think, look, I want to see the City game. I really didn't care when they ended because whoever we play is going to be the team we're going to have to beat. Okay.
Right.
I'm not upset. I like Penn State, but I wasn't upset that if Penn State doesn't want to play us, screw them. We'll go on. We'll play somebody else. I'm not going to worry about it. But I just think this is the worst decision. And I'm a Capel fan. He's a quality guy.
Yeah.
But
I'm taking a little bit of pleasure in the fact that Duquesne beating Dayton probably was the thing that knocked them out.
See, I'm not sure it was because they were listed as third. So two other things would have had to happen. I think what knocked them out is not playing
game, right?
Because that hurt their schedule of strength, which is what they got trashed with. I think that's what hurt it.
Yeah, no, I agree. But
yeah, you get what you get. You schedule a pussy. I mean, that's one thing Jamie Dixon did was he scheduled some decent teams.
Mm-hmm. No, he did.
So that was part of it. But in our last 5 minutes, Fletch, I don't want to disappoint people. Let's talk quarterbacks.
Okay. All right.
Talk about your thoughts this week.
Well, how un-Steeler-like was this week? Incredible. I mean, I think Russell Wilson still has something left in the tank. I think he was in a bad coaching situation there in Denver. I think that bringing in I was stunned, but it's a good situation for him because he can learn from Russell Wilson. They got both of these guys for nothing, Dave.
Yeah.
Now next year he'll count for $25 million against the cap, but that's next year. I mean, you're paying Russell Wilson the league minimum 1.2 million.
They'll actually offer him, because they got to do it by May 2nd.
Wow.
They got to offer him the $25 million option.
Yeah.
You think they'll do it?
I don't know.
I think we'll know by the end of the draft. If they draft a quarterback in the first 3 rounds, I don't think they do.
Yeah. Yeah.
I kind of like the Fields. I mean, 2 years ago, man, I thought he played really well. He looked like he had a future.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. He's a turnover machine. If they can correct that, he's mobile. I mean, I would love to see them come up with some plays that utilize both of them.
Yeah.
That they can bring him off of the bench and just sort of change the tempo a little bit.
It was very an un-Steeler. I just don't know. I'm a Kenny Pickett fan. I think he's going to end up being a good quarterback. I like what he shows when the game was on the crunch time the last 2 years, and that's, you can't teach that. But I'm not so sure I like what kind of transpired.
No.
At the end.
No, and
transpired.
It was not a happy breakup. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And it was almost like the Steelers FU'd him by sending him to a job he had no chance to compete for.
Well, I think the fact that there are a lot of things that happened there. I mean, when he basically didn't want to be on the sidelines, when Rudolph was playing, when he said he didn't really learn anything from being there, when it's, and maybe the Steelers misled him. I don't know. But, when given the opportunity to compete for the starting position and you pout like that, goodbye. Yeah.
Well, that's what they did. And whereas when they first got rid of him, I didn't think they were a better team. With Fields now in tow, I think they're going to have to sign Tyler Boyd. Supposedly they were talking to Mike Williams today, which would be a huge get. But you got to replace Deontay Johnson, and you can't wait for the 4th or 5th round to do that.
No, but you also got to bolster that offensive line, Dave. I mean, that's job number one.
And you got to put a center there, because I don't care if you're Tom Brady, without a good center, you're not a good quarterback.
So speaking of Tom Brady, going back to the last time the Dukes were in the tournament, was 1977. Here's some of the things that happened in 1977. Tom Brady was born that year. Okay?
Yeah.
You had gas at 60 cents a gallon.
Don't forget to tell people that you didn't have gas.
Well, yeah, when you could get it. The average price of a house was $67,000. Your top-rated TV shows, Laverne and Shirley, Happy Days, and Three's Company. A.J. Foyt became the first racer to win 4 Indianapolis 500s. The Sex Pistols album, Nevermind the Bollocks, came out that year. And this is one especially for you, Dave.
Please.
The rings of Uranus were discovered that year.
This is live, so I'm not going to comment on that. But
one other thing, because this one you will enjoy, because you are, like me, are a NASA guy. It was the first test flight of the Space Shuttle Enterprise.
I love that stuff. I mean,
how far we've come in 47 years, Dave.
Steelers had only won 2 Super Bowls.
Yep.
Penguins, people would laugh when you thought about them winning a Stanley Cup. They'd laugh at you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the Pirates hadn't won all their World Series yet. We hadn't seen a Pirate World Series, 79 World Series champion.
Right.
As I stated before, I was a virgin with hair.
Yeah, I'm not talking.
Yeah, all right.
Taking the 5th.
That's fair. But I'm going to rate this. I've got to rate this as my greatest Pittsburgh sports day, even though it was only a conference champion, because I mean, what people who haven't lived through the whole thing, and I'm not talking born in 1976 or 77. I'm talking you and I were alive for the whole damn thing.
Yeah.
And I just the suffering, just the thought that we had in 1981 that this was going to happen again. And not only, I mean, yeah, I know the Red Sox went a lot longer, but I mean, what we went through was not only missing tournaments, but we were just so god awful, and it didn't have to be that way.
No, and they built a facility, the Colombo Center, that was outdated before it even opened. I mean, there were so many mistakes that were made. I mean, administrations turning their backs on sports. It's just, it was terrible. And, I will give Ken Gormley all the credit in the world for what he's done at that university, both with fundraising, adding new programs, a medical school now, Dave. That's incredible.
I saw that the other day. Yeah.
But what he's also done with the sports teams. So, I'm excited about this. Even if they don't win, but, I have a feeling they're going to do this. I really do. But it just feels good.
Well,
yesterday was an emotional day, and I was beat by the end of that game.
Oh, I'm with you. I mean, the only thing I had hoped was I could have been around people that had experienced that with me. I mean,
here's the other thing. I'm pissed when I found out that Joe Magnu went to Molly's. Why didn't we think of that?
I didn't. I mean, I was watching the kids with Viv yesterday and the grandkids, and I mean, I would have hated not to do that, but that would have been such a special experience. And I mean, like Josh said, my phone was blowing up.
Oh, mine too. Crazy.
Especially afterwards. And that meant so much that people knew how much I love the program, knew how much it upset me over the years to see it like this, and just were, texting me left and right to congratulate, because they knew how special this day was.
Yeah, and thanks to Oneberg for letting us have this hour-long special tonight to bring in people like BB and Josh and Robert, and just to talk about this, because it's tough being a Dukes fan, man. It's not an easy thing to do.
I mean, but isn't it everything you hoped it would? I mean, I've imagined this day for 43 years.
Yeah.
43 years I've imagined this day.
Yeah.
And I'm the optimist. I'm the one.
Oh, you kill me every year. I'm like, oh, this is the year, Chris. This is the year, Chris. Shut up, Dave.
Yeah. But I mean, this is what I imagine every year it would be like.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was more. When he hit that free throw at 9 seconds left,
I wept.
Oh, the emotion was just it was overwhelming.
Yeah.
And in honor of Oneberg doing this for us, I'm not going to talk about bears and toilet paper.
Thank you.
Thought about it, Brian, but I'm not going to do it.
But thanks everyone for hanging out with us tonight and letting us get all this off of our chest. It's 40 years of angst that we were able to pour out there for everyone. So we appreciate that. And Dave, I will see you next week.
Well, hang on before you go. Hang on. I'm going to see. I'm going to see if I can do this, Fletch.
Oh, it's the song.
Hang on. I got to find it here. I got to find it. Oh my gosh. It's here somewhere. Here it is. Okay. It's uploading. At 88% and 77% and 55%, Fletch. Oh my God. Okay. I'm going to take us out now, man.
All right. Boom. Come on.